The massive crystal chamber sparkled with light from 12 different suns, each beam representing one of the mighty species that rule the galaxy. Ambassador Jinwoo walked slowly across the polished floor, his black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the colorful alien forms surrounding him. Behind him, 3 other humans followed in perfect formation: Lieutenant Hygiene, Trade Representative Minho, and Cultural Attaché Soyoung. The primary speaker rose from his floating platform, its crystalline body catching the light and throwing rainbows across the walls. When it spoke, translation devices around the chamber hummed to life, converting its musical tones into human speech. Ambassador Jinwoo of Earth, the voice echoed to the vast space. You stand before the Galactic Council to receive our final judgment on humanity's place in civilized space. Jinwoo stopped at the designated spot and bowed slightly, not in submission but in polite acknowledgement. Around him, the other council members shifted in their seats. The Vordhack representative's purple tentacles writhed with barely contained excitement. The Draconic Empire's golden scales glittered as its massive head turned to watch. Even the ghost-like ethereal communion flickered with what might have been anticipation. We have watched your species for 50 Earth years, continued the primary speaker. Your expansion across the stars has been concerning. You do not follow proper protocols. You make alliances without our approval. Your military acts without authorization. Your traders ignore established routes and agreements. The Aquatic Federation's representative gurgled agreement from its water-filled tank. Humans are chaotic, unpredictable. They solve problems in ways that make no sense. Indeed, added the hegemony's mechanical voice through its robotic body. They adapt too quickly, change too often. They disrupt the natural order we have maintained for thousands of years. Jinwoo listened patiently as each council member added their complaints. Humans built cities too fast. They learned alien languages without proper study programs. They helped species that the council had marked as unimportant. They asked too many questions and gave answers that no one expected. Therefore, the primary speaker announced, the council has decided to offer humanity one final chance to join civilized society properly. The chamber fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the distant sound of space traffic beyond the station's walls. Jinwoo waited, his face showing nothing but polite attention. You will place all human worlds under council oversight, the primary speaker declared. All expansion will require our approval. Your military will operate only with our permission. Your trade must follow established patterns. Your colonies will accept council administrators to guide their development. You will cease all contact with unauthorized species. The insectoid hive's cluster of representatives clicked their approval in unison. Submit or face isolation, they said as one voice. No species can survive alone in this galaxy. Look at the Zilani, added the Vordhack with obvious pleasure. 300 years ago, they thought they could defy us. Now they serve faithfully and prosper under our guidance. They learned that cooperation means obedience. Jinwoo turned slowly, looking at each council member in turn. His companions remained perfectly still behind him, but Lieutenant Hygiene's hand rested casually near her sidearm, not as a threat, but as a reminder that humans rarely traveled unprepared. The Zilani were alone, Jinwoo said quietly. They had no allies, no options, no other path forward. They chose survival over independence. As should you, the primary speaker replied with satisfaction. Humanity has grown strong under our loose supervision. Imagine how much stronger you could become with proper guidance. You have 3 days to accept, announced the Draconic Empire's booming voice. 3 days to choose between civilization and exile. No species in history has ever chosen exile. No species can survive without council support. The chamber waited for the expected response. Every species that had faced this choice had eventually submitted. Some took longer than others, but they all came back begging for readmission on any terms. The council members already knew how this would end, with humans learning their proper place in the galactic order. Jinwoo took a step forward and clasped his hands behind his back. His voice, when he spoke, was calm and clear. The United Nations of Earth appreciates the Council's offer, he said. We understand your position, and respect your authority over your member species. However, after careful consideration with our home government and colonial representatives, humanity chooses to withdraw from all council affairs, effective immediately. The silence that followed was so complete that the chamber's air recycling systems seemed loud by comparison. The primary speaker's crystalline form stopped glowing entirely. The Vorthack's tentacles froze mid-writhe. Even the ever-moving ethereal communion became perfectly still. "You refuse?" The primary speaker finally managed. Its translator struggled with a concept that had never needed a process before. "We withdraw," Jinwoo corrected politely. "There is a difference. We thank the Council for their guidance over the past 50 years and wish all member species continued prosperity and peace." He turned to his companions with a slight nod. As one, the human delegation began walking toward the chamber's exit. Their footsteps echoed loudly in the stunned silence. "This is impossible," whispered the Aquatic Federation. "No one walks away from the Council. No one survives alone." But the humans were already gone, leaving behind a chamber full of alien leaders who suddenly realized they had no idea what came next. Captain So-young stood on the bridge of the cargo ship New Seoul, watching the final human transport leave Vorthack Prime's orbital station. Through the view screen, she could see dozens of other human vessels loaded with equipment, supplies, and personnel heading toward the jump point that would take them back to human space. "That's the last of our people from the agricultural centers," reported Navigation Officer Minho from his console. "All human assets recovered from the surface." "Good work, everyone," So-young replied, settling into her captain's chair. "Set course for home. Jump drive ready in 10 minutes. Below on the planet's surface, Administrative Director Yunesio was sealing the final access panel on the last piece of human-operated equipment. Around her, Vorthack officials watched nervously as she handed over control codes for their massive food production facilities. "The nutrient mixture needs to be adjusted every 6 hours," she explained patiently to the lead Vorthack administrator. "If the soil pH drops below 7.2, add buffer compound C, 12. If it goes above 7.8, use the acid neutralizer. The temperature must stay between 23 and 25 degrees, never higher, never lower." The purple-skinned alien's tentacles twitched as it tried to absorb all the information. "This seems complicated. Surely your automated systems can handle these adjustments." Yunesio shook her head. "The systems can monitor everything, but they can't make decisions when unexpected problems happen. That requires judgment, experience, and the ability to adapt quickly." She paused, looking at the vast greenhouse complexes stretching to the horizon. "Your people will do fine. You just need to learn to think creatively when things don't go according to plan." But as the human ships disappeared into hyperspace, it became clear that creative thinking wasn't something the Vorthack had much practice with. Within 2 weeks, crop yields began dropping as the automated systems encountered problems no one had programmed them to solve. Small fluctuations in weather patterns that humans would have adjusted for automatically became major crises. When equipment broke down in unexpected ways, the Vorthack could only follow repair manuals that didn't cover every possible situation. 3 weeks after the humans left, Vorthack Prime was producing 40% less food than before, and the situation was getting worse every day. On the industrial world of Hegemony 7, Engineer Timin was having a different conversation with different aliens, but the results would be eerily similar. The Hegemony prided themselves on being the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy, their robot bodies perfect examples of engineering excellence. "Surely our systems can operate without biological interference," declared Primary Manufacturing Unit 7742 in its emotionless mechanical voice. "Humans are chaotic and inefficient. Our production will improve with their removal." Taemin finished downloading the last of the human-designed logistics programs onto a portable storage device. "Your manufacturing systems are incredibly advanced," he agreed. "But they work so well because we spent years creating programs that could handle unexpected problems. When supply shipments are late, when materials don't meet exact specifications, when equipment breaks down in ways no one predicted, that's when you need flexibility." "We do not require flexibility," the robot replied. "We require precision and compliance with established protocols." Taemin shrugged and walked toward the exit, followed by the last group of human technicians and engineers. "Good luck," he said simply. Within a month, Hegemony 7 production efficiency had fallen by 60%. Their perfect systems, designed for perfect conditions, couldn't cope when reality refused to cooperate with their expectations. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as humans methodically withdrew from every council world and joint project. On crystalline collective worlds, quantum processing arrays began failing without the maintenance protocols that humans had developed over decades of trial and error. The Aquatic Federation's deep space exploration program ground to a halt when they discovered their environmental suits and life support systems had all been designed or significantly improved by human engineers. But perhaps the most shocking discovery came in the Outer Rim territories, where the insectoid hive had been expanding their empire with the help of human military advisors. Fleet Commander Drone Prime Alpha led 3 colony fleets toward a cluster of resource-rich worlds, confident that their superior numbers and organization would overwhelm any resistance. They encountered an alien species unlike anything in Council databases, crystalline beings who moved through space without ships and could manipulate gravity itself. The hive's traditional tactics, based on overwhelming force and rigid formations, proved completely useless against an enemy that fought in 3 dimensions and could turn their own weapons against them. 2 of the 3 fleets were completely destroyed. The 3rd limped home with news that sent shock waves through the hive's collective consciousness. Without human advisors to develop new tactics and adapt to unexpected threats, they were helpless against anything that didn't fight exactly the way they expected. Back in council chambers, emergency sessions became daily occurrences as reports flooded in from across member territories. Economic projections showed declining productivity. Military reports detailed failed operations. Trade representatives reported shipping delays and supply shortages. "This is temporary," the primary speaker insisted to increasingly nervous council members. "They will realize their mistake and return within months. No species can survive without the council's support and protection." But as weeks turned into months, it became clear that humanity wasn't struggling in isolation. Intelligence reports suggested they were not only surviving, but actually expanding into previously unexplored regions of space, forming new alliances with species the Council had never bothered to contact. The galaxy was changing, and for the first time in millennia, the Council wasn't controlling that change. Fleet Admiral Dong-hyun stood in the command center of Harmony Station, humanity's newest orbital facility built in the unexplored regions beyond Council space. 6 months had passed since the withdrawal, and the reports coming in from across the galaxy painted a picture that even he found surprising. "Status update from our intelligence network," announced communications specialist Nari, her fingers dancing across her console. "The Crystalline Collective is requesting emergency assistance. Their quantum processing centers are shutting down faster than they can repair them." Intelligence analyst Kyung-ho looked up from his workstation with barely hidden satisfaction. Apparently, those primitive human maintenance procedures they complained about were the only thing keeping their systems running. Without our technicians making constant small adjustments, their perfect crystal matrices are developing microscopic flaws that cascade into total failures. Admiral Dong-hyun nodded grimly. "What about the others?" "The Aquatic Federation has completely abandoned their deep space exploration program," reported Defense Coordinator Sang-wook. "They can't survive in hostile environments long enough to establish new colonies. All their environmental suits and life support systems were either built by us or used our designs." But the most troubling news came from the Outer Rim territories. "Sir," Sang-wook continued, "we've received disturbing intelligence about the insectoid hive. They've lost contact with 4 separate colony fleets in the past month." Admiral Dong-hyun frowned. The hive had been one of the most successful expanding civilizations in the galaxy, largely because human military advisors had helped them develop flexible tactics for dealing with unknown threats. What happened to them? Unknown alien species with capabilities unlike anything in Council databases. The hive's traditional approach, overwhelming numbers and rigid formations, proved completely useless. Without our people there to analyze new threats and develop countermeasures, they're fighting the same way they did 1,000 years ago. Meanwhile, on the agricultural world of Vorthak Prime, Regional Administrator Tentacle Weaver of Plans was staring at production reports that made no sense. Food output had dropped to 60% of pre-withdrawal levels and was still falling. Explain to me again why the soil chemistry keeps changing. It demanded of its chief agricultural technician. The automated systems detect changes but cannot determine appropriate responses. The technician replied nervously. When unexpected weather patterns occur, when new plant diseases appear, when supply shipments contain materials with slightly different compositions than expected, the systems have no protocols for adaptation. But surely we can create new protocols? The technician's tentacles writhed with distress. We have tried, honored administrator, but each solution creates new problems we did not foresee. The humans somehow knew how to see connections we cannot perceive, how to predict consequences we cannot imagine. Similar conversations were happening across council space. On hegemony worlds, perfect manufacturing systems ground to halt when faced with the smallest unexpected variations. The Draconic Empire's habitat domes began failing as maintenance procedures broke down without human oversight. Even the highly organized ethereal communion found themselves unable to resolve conflicts between their collective consciousness and individual desires, problems that human mediators had quietly solved for decades. But while council worlds struggled, humanity was thriving in ways that shocked even their own leadership. Explorer Captain Young-Soo had just returned from the Outer Spire with news that would reshape human understanding of the galaxy. Admiral, he reported to Dong-hyun via secure communication, we've made contact with 17 previously unknown civilizations in this sector alone. The Council never explored out here because they thought it was empty space. What kind of species are we talking about? The nomadic wanderers are silicon-based life forms who live on asteroid ships and have perfect knowledge of hidden hyperspace routes. The collective minds are plant-based entities with incredibly advanced biotechnology. The deep thinkers are ancient artificial intelligences that have been waiting for someone patient enough to communicate with them properly. Admiral Dong-hyun felt a chill of excitement. Are they friendly? More than friendly. They're eager for partnership. It turns out the Council ignored them because they don't fit into standard diplomatic categories. The Wanderers won't settle on planets, so the Council called them primitive nomads. The collective minds think too slowly for Council bureaucracy, so they were labeled unresponsive. The deep thinkers communicate through mathematical concepts instead of language, so the Council decided they weren't really intelligent. Within months, these new alliances were producing remarkable results. Nomadic wanderer navigation technology allowed human ships to travel through hyperspace routes that cut travel time in half. Collective mind biotechnology provided solutions to terraforming challenges that had puzzled human scientists for decades. The deep thinkers shared computational methods that revolutionized human artificial intelligence. Trade Representative Eun-ji was amazed at how quickly the new confederation was growing. We're receiving requests for a partnership from dozens of species every week, she reported to Human Leadership Council. Most of them were rejected by the Council for being too different, too independent, or too innovative. What about our former Council partners? Asked Admiral Dong-hyun. That's the interesting part. We're getting secret messages from individuals within Council species asking for help. Draconic Empire engineers want to hire us to fix their failing habitat systems. Vordak agricultural supervisors are offering massive payments for consultation. Even hegemony manufacturing units are quietly requesting our logistics programs. The galaxy was dividing into two very different civilizations. The struggling council territories, bound by rigid rules and unable to adapt to change, and the growing human confederation, built on cooperation between diverse species who valued innovation and flexibility above conformity. And humanity, the species the Council had tried to control, had become the center of something far greater than anyone had imagined possible. Director Eun-ji received the encrypted message in her office aboard New Busan Station, humanity's primary diplomatic hub floating in the neutral zone between Council space and the Outer Rim. The sender identification made her pause in surprise. It was from High Engineer Scale Bearer of Stars, one of the most prominent officials in the Draconic Empire. Honored Director, the message read in carefully formal language, "We require immediate consultation regarding critical habitat dome failures across our primary colonies. Compensation terms are open to negotiation. Absolute discretion is essential for all parties involved. Unji leaned back in her chair and smiled. This was the 15th such message she had received in the past week. The Crystalline Collective needed human technicians to prevent their quantum computers from complete collapse. The Aquatic Federation was desperately seeking replacement life support systems for their deep space installations. Even the proud hegemony had quietly inquired about purchasing human-design manufacturing protocols. "They need us," she explained to the emergency council meeting she had called in the station's main conference room. "But they can't admit it publicly without losing face with their own people and the other council members." Defense Minister Jae Sung, a grizzled veteran of humanity's early expansion conflicts, shook his head with bitter amusement. 6 months ago, they wanted to put us under supervision. Now they're begging for our help in secret. "What do we tell them?" asked Trade Coordinator Min Young. Before Eun-ji could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the conference room in red as Admiral Wu Jin's voice crackled through the communication system. "All senior staff to battle stations immediately. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching our border zones. Preliminary identification shows ships from all 12 council species." Within minutes, the human leadership was gathered in the station's command center, watching tactical displays that showed the largest military force ever assembled by the Galactic Council. 12 battle fleets, each representing one of the council species, moved in perfect formation toward human space. "Fleet size estimate?" asked Admiral Wu Jin as he studied the sensor readings. "Over 3,000 ships," reported Sensor Operator Hygiene. "Everything from Draconic Empire battlecruisers to insectoid hive swarm fighters. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." The Council's message was simple and direct. Humanity will cease this illegal rebellion and return to Council space under proper supervision. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally or face the consequences of your defiance. Admiral Wu Jin turned to his staff. "How many ships can we field?" 800 human vessels, replied Fleet Coordinator Sang Min. "But we also have support from our new allies. The Nomadic Wanderers can contribute 200 ships. The Silicon Collective has agreed to provide defensive support, and the Deep Thinkers are sharing tactical analysis." Still outnumbered 3-1, observed Defense Minister Jae-sung grimly. "Numbers aren't everything," Admiral Wu Jin replied. "The Council expects us to fight like they do, rigid formations, predictable tactics, standard engagement protocols. They have no idea what our new alliances have taught us." Captain Young-min commanded the lead human vessel as the two fleets faced each other in the empty space between star systems. His ship, the Soul's Pride, had been retrofitted with technology that would have been impossible without humanity's diverse partnerships. Nomadic Wanderer stealth systems that could make entire squadrons invisible, Silicon Collective defensive arrays that could absorb and redirect energy weapons, and Deep Thinker computational systems that could predict enemy movements with startling accuracy. "This is Captain Young-min of the Human Defense Force." He broadcast to the Council fleet. "You are entering sovereign territory without authorization. State your intentions." The response came from the Draconic Empire's flagship in a voice that dripped with arrogant certainty. "Surrender immediately or be destroyed. The Council will not tolerate further rebellion from inferior species." Young-min exchanged glances with his tactical officer, Lieutenant Kyung-soo. "Inferior species? They're about to learn just how much they underestimated us." The battle began when the Council fleets moved forward in their traditional formations. Massive ships in orderly lines, each species fighting according to doctrines that have remained unchanged for centuries. The insectoid hive swarmed forward in overwhelming numbers. The Draconic Empire advanced in wedge formations. The hegemony moved their robotic ships with mechanical precision, but the human response was unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. Ships appeared and disappeared as Wanderer stealth technology confused enemy sensors. Energy beams that should have destroyed human vessels were absorbed by Silicon Collective shields and redirected back at their sources. Most confusing of all, human ships seemed to anticipate every Council move before it happened, dodging attacks and striking at weak points with impossible precision. How are they doing this? Demanded the Council Fleet Commander as his carefully planned assault dissolved into chaos. The answer was simple but incomprehensible to Council thinking. Humanity wasn't fighting as a single species with rigid tactics. They were fighting as part of a confederation where different species contributed different strengths, where innovation was valued over tradition, and where adaptation happened in real time instead of over centuries. Within 6 hours, the largest military force in galactic history was in full retreat, leaving behind disabled ships and shattered formations. The Council fleet limped home carrying impossible news. The chaotic humans had not just survived their ultimatum. They had decisively defeated the combined might of galactic civilization. The message was clear. Humanity hadn't just walked away from the Council's authority. They had grown beyond it entirely. Ambassador Jinwoo, now bearing the title of Senior Diplomatic Coordinator, stood in the Council chamber aboard humanity's mobile diplomatic platform. 2 years had passed since humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was completely different from what anyone had imagined possible. The chamber itself reflected this change. Instead of the rigid hierarchy of the old council chambers, species of all kinds sat together as equals, from the towering silicon-based collective minds to the tiny energy beings that had once been dismissed as primitive life forms. Before him stood a delegation that would have been unthinkable just months earlier, representatives of the former Galactic Council species, their once proud bearing now replaced by nervous humility. The primary speaker, its crystalline form dimmed and cracked, spoke in a voice that carried none of its former authority. Honor Coordinator Jinwoo. It said, the translation carrying undertones of desperation that even the universal translators couldn't hide. We come to formally request membership in your confederation. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species observed the proceedings with quiet interest. The nomadic wanderers floated in their mobility suits, having never needed permanent seats. The deep thinkers projected their mathematical consciousness through holographic displays. Former council species sat alongside races that had been excluded from galactic politics for thousands of years, all participating as equals in humanity's new order. Chief Administrator Myung rose to address the former council delegation. Her role was to explain how the Confederation worked, something that proved challenging when dealing with species who only understood hierarchy and control. We need to be clear about something important, she began. We don't rule here. We don't give orders or demand obedience. We coordinate, we facilitate, and we help solve problems. But every member species keeps their independence, their culture, and their right to make their own decisions. The former primary speaker's crystalline structure flickered with confusion. But who has final authority? Who makes the ultimate decisions when species disagree? We do, Jinwoo replied simply. All of us, together. When problems happen, we talk. We listen to everyone involved. We find solutions that work for as many people as possible. Sometimes we agree to disagree and find ways to coexist peacefully anyway. This concept seemed to cause physical distress among the former council representatives. The Vorthag delegates' tentacles writhed anxiously. But what about order? What about proper procedures? What about maintaining standards? Nomadic fleet leader Starwalker Between Worlds spoke from his floating platform, its voice carrying the wisdom of a species that had observed galactic politics from the outside for millennia. Order comes from cooperation, not control. Procedures work when they serve people, not when people serve procedures. Standards are maintained when everyone benefits from maintaining them. The transformation of the galaxy had been remarkable to witness. Where the old council had divided space into rigid territories controlled by member species, the new confederation allowed free movement and cooperation between all civilizations. Trade routes that had been restricted for centuries were now open to everyone. Scientific collaboration between species with completely different ways of thinking had produced breakthroughs that no single civilization could have achieved alone. But perhaps most importantly, conflict were resolved through mediation and negotiation rather than force or economic pressure. When the Silicon Collective and the energy beings disagreed about mining rights in a disputed system, human mediators had helped them find solutions that actually benefited both species more than either of their original proposals. Intelligence Coordinator Kyung-ho, delivered his regular report on the state of former council territories. The Crystalline Collective has stabilized under their new local governments, but they're still dealing with technology failures from the withdrawal period. The Aquatic Federation has formed a mutual defense pact with 3 non-council species and seems to be recovering economically. The Insectoid Hive has completely restructured their military around flexible small unit tactics instead of mass formations. But the most dramatic changes had occurred among species that were completely collapsing. Vorthack Prime is still experiencing food shortages. Kyung-ho continued. 3 major hegemony manufacturing worlds have been abandoned as their populations relocated to systems with more adaptable infrastructure. The Draconic Empire has fragmented into dozens of smaller territorial groups. The former Vorthack representative stepped forward, its purple skin pale with desperation. Our people are starving. Our agricultural systems continue to fail despite our best efforts. We need help learning how to think differently about problem solving. This was the heart of what had happened to Galaxy. The council system had created civilizations that were incredibly efficient at following established procedures, but completely helpless when faced with unexpected challenges. When humans withdrew, taking with them their ability to adapt and innovate, entire species found themselves unable to cope with the basic problems of running a civilization. "We'll help," Jin-Woo said simply. "That's what we do. But understand that joining the Confederation means accepting that other species might have better solutions to your problems than you do. It means listening to ideas that seem strange or wrong at first. It means changing when change is needed." The former primary speakers' form brightened slightly. "We understand. We've learned that our way was not the only way, or even the best way." Over the following months, the former council species gradually integrated into the Confederation. They discovered that a galaxy built on cooperation rather than control was not only more prosperous and peaceful, but also more innovative and resilient than anything they had known before. And humanity, the species that had once been told to submit or face exile, found themselves at the center of galactic civilization that valued their greatest strength, the ability to bring diverse people together to solve impossible problems.